A girl confesses her feelings to Makoto, saying she likes him and wants to date him. He apologizes, explaining that his family situation prevents him from being able to date. The girl tries to reason with him, but Makoto bows his head and apologizes again. Heartbroken, she runs away in tears. As she cries, Makoto quietly says, "Thank you, sensei." A woman, hiding behind a tree, tells Makoto to stop calling her every time he gets a confession. He apologizes again, explaining he doesn't want to risk getting involved in a prank. The woman asks why he doesn't trust people and warns him that he won't make any friends with that attitude. Makoto replies that he doesn't need friends, thanks her, and asks for permission to leave. She tries to stop him, urging him to at least listen to what she has to say. Makoto believes that being cautious will help him avoid fake confessions. While he feels joy initially, he knows it will lead to pain, and he vows never to make that mistake again. Back in elementary school, Makoto loved making jokes, especially when the girl he liked laughed at them. Her laughter made him feel happy. One day, while playing, she told him to stop. As she stepped on a stone and fell, Makoto stood still, realizing his mistake. In that moment, he understood the mistake he'd made by not rushing to help. The other kids rushed over to see if she was okay, but they saw she was injured. Some accused Makoto of pushing her. Others pointed to her bleeding knee. When Makoto hurried to get band-aids, everyone thought he was running away. One boy shouted, "Don't run, apologize!" When Makoto returned, he asked where the girl, Shizuka-chan, was. Another girl refused to tell him, accusing him of not apologizing. He tried to defend himself, but no one believed him. False rumors spread, and Makoto became known as the bad guy, accused of hurting Shizuka-chan, breaking notebooks, throwing rocks, and insulting others. The rumors spread unchecked, and no one believed Makoto. He was isolated, with no one to trust. But thank God we still have family, right? He thought to himself. When Makoto got home, his mother asked if he had heard a girl scream at him. His younger sister called him a bastard, accusing him of hurting Shizuka-chan. Makoto couldn't believe they hadn't listened to his side. His mother scolded him for his actions and reminded him how badly he was behaving. His family was strict, and they favored his sister. His mom ordered him to apologize. Makoto tried to explain himself, but his mother just called his school. No one believed him, friends or family. If they never would, why bother trying? From that day on, Makoto resolved to stay silent. In high school, Makoto spent his days reading in the library, where his classmate Saito was always there. One day, he noticed a phone on the table and asked Saito if it was hers. She blushed and thanked him, saying she'd forgotten it there. Saito, realizing he spent all his time in the library, asked Makoto which books he liked. Makoto felt happy, thinking he had made a friend, but then a misunderstanding led people to believe he was trying to attack her. The rumors spread, and once again, Makoto found himself lonely. Even when girls called his name, he wondered what they wanted from him. He noticed a girl named Kisaragi. She confessed that she had liked him for a long time and wanted to date him. Makoto asked if there were any rumors about him. Kisaragi reassured him that she trusted him and asked if they could at least be friends. Makoto agreed, saying they could start there. She mentioned it might be moving too fast and suggested they meet on the weekend. That weekend, Makoto became the laughingstock. He realized he had been tricked by Kisaragi and the others. They mocked him, calling her a genius, and he felt humiliated. It was all a punishment game. As he looked at his phone, he realized that his heart, which had once loved, was now shattered. He deleted her number. Bad things continued to happen. Makoto felt cold but found some relief when he wore gloves. One day, a girl greeted him with a, "Good morning, it's so cold." He remembered her name, Nanako, but realized he had forgotten her last name. Nanako spoke to him a bit during break, and other girls warned her that he might trick or hurt her. Nanako reassured them, saying Makoto wasn't that kind of person. Later, Makoto received a text from Nanako inviting him to karaoke that weekend, suggesting she could bring a friend or two. He agreed, thinking it would be fine with company. When he arrived, the boys were laughing at him. One said Makoto can't get close to Nanako, mocking him and calling him disgusting. They even planned to take all his belongings. Realizing he'd been betrayed again, Makoto vowed not to lower his guard anymore. He hated himself for constantly falling into the same trap. He ended his high school years alone. One day, a girl approached him and suggested they go home together. He recognized her, Miyazaki Shizuka. All the girls who had betrayed him were now in his high school. He wondered why Shizuka, who had never spoken to him before, was talking to him now. He turned away, not wanting to get involved, but she followed him, surprised by his reaction. She asked if this was his house, but Makoto just wanted to go home. Shizuka commented on how gloomy he seemed and noted that he had no friends. She offered to be friends if he wanted. Makoto was speechless. Shizuka said many things had happened, but they were over now. She had always believed in him, and Makoto felt everything was wrong. Her school life seemed entirely different from his. She said she trusted him. Makoto wondered why she was saying that now. Shizuka urged him not to be shy and to go back to doing silly things like before. She asked if that was okay. Makoto asked why she was laughing now, pointing out that they had never talked until now. She explained that they were in different classes, and she had been too shy to talk to him. Shizuka apologized for the past, admitting she had been scared but wanted to change. Now that she had entered high school, she had found the courage. Makoto knew what happened after and asked her to stay away from him. She took his hand, asking why he wanted her to stay away. She reminded him he had liked her before and pleaded with him not to act strangely. Makoto admitted it was his fault and begged her to stop. "I'm really sorry," he said, leaving Shizuka speechless. He told her it was too late for her to say she trusted him. He went inside, locking the door behind him as she tried to stop him. His sister asked if he had been with Shizuka since he had come home late. He realized she was listening in. He told her he was home, apologized for being late, and asked if he could go upstairs. She told him to stop being so polite. They were siblings. She smiled, saying, "Come on, Oni-chan, you were so bright and cheerful before." He asked for permission and left. She welcomed him back. His mother noticed he was late and reminded him to be ready early. She might be home late due to work, but she suggested they go out to celebrate his first day of school. Makoto was surprised, saying he hadn't heard about it before. His mother encouraged him to enjoy time with family. After the incident with Shizuka, outings with his family became awkward, so he stopped going. He stayed home, studying and reading alone. His mother mentioned that his dad might be overseas for work, but told him to stop sulking. They were family. She apologized, promising to be more careful in the future. Makoto loved writing his own novels, as it let him lose himself in his world. It was his only hobby that mattered, since he often felt like he had nothing else. He noticed 2 messages on his tablet. One was a passionate review of his novel Ice Guy. The second was from a publishing company, giving him contact details so he could respond. He hesitated, deciding to leave it alone as usual, telling himself things would only get complicated. But secretly, he was happy. He put the tablet away, pretending he hadn't seen it. Makoto felt sleepy from thinking about the publishing email. He planned to nap after lunch. As he saw a girl eating alone while reading, he thought of her solitude. Her name was Shimazuka, and she was also the subject of some bad rumors. But that wasn't his concern. He thought she was like him. The girl approached, asking if she could have lunch with him. Makoto was surprised. He didn't recognize her. She noticed he had finished eating and suggested they talk. Makoto wondered if she was only trying to befriend him, only to abandon him later, just like Nanako had. He told her he had a book to read, but she insisted they talk, claiming he was trying to avoid her. Makoto called after her, saying he wanted to see her book once she was done. She handed it to him, replying, "Take it," and he thanked her. No one wanted to befriend Shimazuka. She shyly smiled, saying it was the first time she saw Makoto talk to someone. Ignoring her, she turned away. People didn't like Shimazuka because of the rumors about her. Everyone judged without seeking the truth. Makoto didn't want people like that around him. He thought about her comment. This was the first time he'd spoken to someone. He agreed with her. If anyone wondered why he was interacting with someone, he'd be the first to ask himself. On the way home, carrying shopping bags, his sister offered to help. Makoto told her not to worry about him. If she held a bag, their mother would be upset with him. He wondered why he was even trying to talk to Shimazuka. It wasn't something he usually did. As he walked, he saw her approaching, smiling while looking at her phone. Makoto's younger sister remarked, "Look, the troublemakers are leaving." She found Shimazuka's smile odd, and realized she was in their school's uniform. Shimazuka hung up her phone and saw them. She glanced at them, and Makoto wondered if she was squinting at that moment. They passed by, and she continued staring at her phone. Makoto's sister said Shimazuka was the delinquent everyone talked about at school. She thought Shimazuka was strange. Makoto didn't know what to say. When his sister asked if he had said something, he kept walking. She asked why he had stopped playing with her. She reminded him that he used to play with Shizuka, but not with her. She used to want to tease him when they were younger. Good versus bad. She believed the rumors, lied to her mother about something terrible, never realizing how her actions hurt others. She blamed him for not paying attention to her. She said she understood, and if the rumors were wrong, she believed her cool Oni-chan wouldn't have done something like that. Makoto reflected, thinking he should calm her down. He wouldn't make that mistake again. She said she was the only one who truly trusted him. Makoto apologized and asked her not to call him Oni-chan anymore. The past couldn't be changed, making her wonder why he said that. She asked if she should call him Makoto instead. He apologized again, saying his food was melting and that he'd be home before her, then hurried away. She was left awkwardly calling out, "Oni-chan." At home, Makoto was typing about his conversation with his sister. Haruka had thrown him off more than he realized. All he wanted was to keep writing. He noticed a new message. He opened the message from Pameko. "I'm cheering for you. Your novels have completely saved me. I've been really down lately, but I'm trying to study for you. I'm always supporting you." Makoto realized Pameko had been messaging him a lot. Her words always made him feel better, since he didn't often receive messages from readers. Makoto thanked Pameko, stretched, and went back to writing. The next morning, as he left for school, he checked his messages. Nothing new. Walking to school, he noticed 3 girls, 2 of whom were staring at him. As he passed, one girl called out, "Makoto, wait a minute." She wanted to talk and meet him in person. One of the girls introduced herself as Kurosawa Momo, Shizuka's friend. She asked him what he was laughing about, reminding him her friend was serious. Makoto realized this was not a joke. Shizuka explained she hadn't lied to him before. Despite all that had happened, she hoped they could move on and suggested they watch a movie together to help him feel better. Kurosawa Momo hugged Shizuka, calling her a good girl and complimenting her cuteness. Kurosawa turned to Makoto, shouting at him for his foolishness, claiming no one cared about his past. Despite his violent actions, Shizuka still liked him. She accused him of faking his confession and questioned his sanity, but Shizuka asked her to stop, insisting everything was fine. Makoto wasn't sure if Miyazaki's actions were kind, but he noted she never tried to correct his doubts. Shizuka told Makoto he didn't look well, and Kurosawa called Shizuka cute, comparing her to Makoto. Realizing he needed to be blunt, Makoto decided to speak harsh truths. Just then, Shinazuka walked up, glaring at them, saying, "Move." Kurosawa, surprised, reminded her they used to be friends, insisting they hadn't done anything wrong. Shinazuka sneered, "Friends? Really?" Kurosawa tried to convince her they were friends once, asking her to stop acting tough, promising she believed in her. Makoto and Shinazuka stared in disbelief. Shinazuka tried to speak, but Makoto silenced her. He challenged Shizuka and Kurosawa, asking if they had ever been wrongfully slandered, betrayed, or accused of things they didn't do. He told them to stop pretending they understood when they knew nothing. All he wanted was to stay out of trouble and ask them to leave, saying it was too late to fix things. Shizuka, tearful, ran away. Shinazuka stood by, observing. She sipped from her bottle, absorbed in her phone. Makoto guessed she was reading a web novel and enjoying the chapter. He noticed her typing fast and checked his phone, but there were still no messages for him. He was waiting for feedback on his new chapter. A message from Pameko popped up, saying, "I love this part. Finally read it this morning. So great. I felt a bit embarrassed using the heart emoji, but it's true. You made my day better." Makoto was happy she liked it. He wondered if replying immediately would seem strange, but decided he wanted to respond and thank her, mentioning his new chapter. Meanwhile, Shinazuka was staring at him. She looked at his phone as he held it. She texted, "What's going on?" then glanced at Makoto as he got a ping. A new message from Pameko appeared, "If possible." Confused, Makoto asked, "What could be possible?" Shinazuka realized who she was texting, and her face turned bright red as her phone slipped from her hand. Makoto noticed a Pomeranian dog sticker on her phone. He called out the dog's name, and her face reddened further. He realized Pameko must be her. He quickly reassured himself, thinking, "It's not Shinazuka. It's definitely Pameko." The tension rose as they avoided eye contact. A sound from Shinazuka caught his attention, heightening the awkwardness. Makoto's heart raced, his body suddenly sweating for no reason. He told himself to calm down. Shinazuka and he weren't even friends. Someone greeted, and a teacher announced homeroom was about to start. Makoto planned to delete the message later, but He decided to delete it after class, yet even after lunch, he hadn't deleted it. He wondered why he couldn't bring himself to erase her messages. Holding the phone felt uncomfortable, but there was no rush to delete it. The last class was about to begin. The morning had been stressful, and he longed to go home. The teacher reminded them they were almost done with their semester, but had something else to discuss. Makoto noticed Shinozuka now seemed to exude an intimidating aura, as if pushing people away. The teacher discussed forming groups for the trip. Makoto tried to ignore his thoughts of Shinozuka, deciding it was best to stay away from people. A trip? Makoto never joined groups, so he had no memories of such events. The thought made him uneasy. The teacher encouraged students to form groups over the next few days. Makoto stood, eager to leave. Shinozuka glanced at him, still red-faced, and attempted to speak. Makoto asked if he could leave first. Shinozuka seemed like she wanted to talk to him. She kicked her table and screamed at him to stop trying to be friends, storming off angrily. Saito approached, asking if Shinozuka was his friend, showing clear dislike for her. Makoto recognized Saito Miyu, who had changed her image for her high school debut. He remembered their library encounter. Makoto began to leave, but Saito reminded him that he hadn't spoken to her much lately. She recalled their fun times in the library and called him by name, Makoto. She wondered aloud if that was a first love, admitting it was awkward. Saito asked if it was sad to be alone. Makoto replied that he knew everything that followed. Makoto asked if they went to the same school as her sister, specifically Shizuka, Nanako, and Kisaragi. She asked if he hadn't realized. Makoto admitted he didn't recognize their faces because he'd erased them from his memory. She took part of the blame and asked if they could be friends again. Makoto refused, but she insisted that she'd learned about romance games and could fix everything by learning from her mistakes. He realized his sister and childhood friend weren't the only ones who justified things in their heads. She said she had something interesting, took off her glasses, and promised him a nostalgic shock. When she put them back on, she asked, "Do I look okay?" She joked, wondering if he'd be excited to see her in glasses after so long. Makoto tried to stay calm, not letting his emotions show. He convinced himself to forget his high school memories and told himself he was empty. He took out his phone. Saito, still excited, thought Makoto was taking pictures of her, reminding him to use a filter, but he was focused on his phone. A text from Pameko appeared. "It's Pameko. A lot has happened, but I'm really excited for your new chapter. Can I send you a support message from now on? No need to reply. I'll still send them Pameko." Makoto thought she'd never text again. Meanwhile, Saito thought Makoto was about to take a picture and believed they had connected on some deeper level. Makoto wondered about the feeling in his heart. Maybe he was happy because Pameko had texted him, showing interest in his novel. He realized he didn't want to betray her by not finishing his work. When would that happen? He decided to go home and write, feeling at peace. His mother asked if he had a moment. He apologized, saying he was with a friend and couldn't talk. His sister called out to their mother, who told her to get ready, as Makoto was done. He felt like his presence would only cause trouble, wishing they would go without him. His mother insisted that family trips weren't a problem, and that he needed to grow up and let go of the past. Makoto wondered if she was trying to take care of him. He recalled how his mother had gone out with his sister during his high school graduation without telling him. His mother mentioned she'd heard he went to a party alone, asking why he hadn't invited anyone. He said it was a waste of money and wished her good night. Human nature doesn't change easily. His mother had not changed from those days. He had mentioned having a friend earlier, but leaving them suddenly would cause problems. His sister teased him about his invisible friend and asked him to stop, suggesting they go out together and maybe have some meat. "Yeah, I guess my words aren't trustworthy," he admitted, leaving her confused. He walked out saying, "Sorry, I'll go." Haruka was probably heading to the new shopping mall near the station. There was a long line to get into stores, both in person and online. Makoto thought he wouldn't run into anyone he knew at that old store. At the store, he was relieved to find the food court empty, ready to write his novel without distractions. He noticed Shinozuka sitting alone, absorbed in a book on her phone. She looked happy, lost in what she was reading. Makoto silently observed her. Shinozuka took out a keyboard and began typing, clearly enjoying herself. Makoto noticed something. Looking at his phone, he saw Pameko's page with a message, "Novelization coming." He realized it showed the results of her work. Pameko was a writer, though she hadn't updated her work in a year. Pameko's message read, "I read the latest chapter. It was tough, but I'm happy there was a resolution. I understand the character Mike's feelings. Writing new chapters is hard, but please try. Makoto pocketed his phone and ordered 2 glasses of orange juice. He walked up behind Shinazuka. She didn't turn around, saying, "What if you're flirting with me? Go away." When she looked back, she saw it was Makoto and asked when he had arrived. They sat together. Shinazuka started to speak, but Makoto interrupted, saying he didn't want to be her friend. She sarcastically asked, "What about your overly polite tone?" Shinazuka admitted she had her own rumors, though not as bad as his, and said she'd leave him alone. Makoto wondered if his reputation was really that bad, replying that he didn't care about the rumors. People didn't know if they were true. Shinazuka responded that she didn't care either, and didn't want to be disturbed. She said she didn't want anything to do with anyone. The rumors about Shinazuka were harsh: dating older men, coercion, violence, sneaking out at night. Makoto handed her the orange juice, calling the rumors silly, offering, "Here's some juice if you want it." She took it, then suddenly screamed, not wanting to be deceived anymore. She told him to leave her alone and stop being kind. When he grabbed her hand, the glass spilled. She apologized, then blamed him. "Yeah, wait, it's your fault." He insisted he was the one at fault for offering her the drink. She accused him of not intending a friendly conversation, demanding to know what he wanted from her. Makoto simply said, "Yeah, okay." He firmly declared he didn't want to be friends, not trusting her, and preferring not to be betrayed. She replied she didn't want to be friends either, and told him to leave. They were still at the store when Makoto asked why she stopped writing. Shinazuka, surprised, asked how he knew. She stared at him, suspecting he'd heard it from someone else, admitting they weren't pretending anymore. Makoto reassured her not to worry, as he wouldn't be friends with her and to just relax. She yelled that was no excuse, and reminded him how he always let characters die in his stories. She told him to appreciate his characters more. Makoto just stared as she gave him advice. She blushed and said she'd forgive it because the heroine was cute. Makoto asked if he could read her work, admitting he had never read any of it. Shinazuka tried to stop him, saying, "Wait, my old works were just essays." Makoto glanced at her phone and said, "This looks like a romance story, a thrilling adventure." She asked him not to mock the romance genre, calling him Nyanta, and told him to stop reading. Makoto kept reading, surprised by a sudden breakup in the story. She shot back that his stories often started with sudden deaths. Both of them felt shy. Shinazuka pulled out her phone, wanting to read his work. Makoto felt embarrassed, and she started laughing. It was now night, and Shinazuka's stomach growled. She reminded him she hadn't eaten lunch, and they'd been talking too much. Makoto wondered when he'd last talked this much. "Mikoto is so smart," as expected of the real Shinazuka. Makoto said he was going to eat, and asked if she wanted to go home. She replied that her family was too annoying and trusting, and they didn't get along. Suddenly, Shinazuka shouted, "Ugh, give me a break." Makoto asked what was wrong. A girl walked into the store, saying, "Finally I see you." She announced she came to pick up Anri-chan. Shinazuka blushed, frustrated, and Makoto just stared. The girl hugged Shinazuka from behind, calling her Anri-chan and telling her to stop. Makoto watched with curiosity. The girl asked if Makoto was her friend and greeted him. Both Shinazuka and Makoto denied being friends, leaving the girl confused. The girl introduced herself as Saeko, Araikan's younger sister, and said she was happy her sister had friends her own age. Makoto introduced himself as Shinazuka's classmate, Shinju Makoto. Seiko commented that Makoto was cute, comparing him to Tetsurao, a character in the anime The Sword, and the blood-stained hero, which Shinazuka loved. Shinazuka grabbed her bag, told Makoto she was leaving, and reminded him that they weren't friends. Makoto assured her he had no such intentions either. Saiko, tired from work, suggested they stay and chat a bit longer, but Shinazuka yelled, "Shut up, I'm leaving now, Nyanta." Realizing her slip, Shinazuka tried to cover it up. Saiko asked, "Nyanta?" Makoto warned Shinazuka to be careful, and she apologized. Saiko asked in surprise if Makoto was Nyanta-sensei, the author of Miketaru's Grand Isekai adventure. She eagerly urged him to confirm, calling him Nyanta-sensei. Sako asked Shinazuka if Makoto was really Nyanta-sensei. Confused, Makoto didn't know where to begin. Shinazuka denied it, claiming she never said Nyanta. Saiko insisted she had heard it clearly, and reasoned that Makoto must be Nyanta since he loved novels enough to talk to Enri. She called him Nyanta and asked why he hadn't responded to her texts, saying she'd been waiting eagerly for him to arrange a meeting with the editor. Makoto realized she was the one who had sent him the revised manuscript for publication a few days ago, Seiko reminded Shinozuka that she should tell her sister that Makoto was Nyanta-sensei's friend. Shinozuka yelled, "We are not friends!" Sayako explained that she'd been worried about his lack of response and asked if he needed more time to think about publishing. Seiko suggested they discuss publishing later, since it was late and they lived close, calling it the fate of publishing. Shinozuka felt annoyed with her sister. Makoto noticed the contrast between Shinozuka and Sayako's personalities. He wondered if it was because of Sayako's calm and brilliant demeanor. He stopped thinking about Shinozuka and asked about her sister being an editor. Shinozuka said she hadn't expected her sister to take charge of him, adding that Sayako hadn't used any connections to help him publish, but that his work was more than good enough. Shinozuka said she hadn't expected her sister to take charge of him, adding that Sayako hadn't used any connections to help him publish, but that his work was more than good enough. She turned away, blushing, and thanked him. "Thank you, Nyanta." Makoto stared at her in disbelief. Sayako insisted they were good friends, and asked Shinozuka about their past, adding that she didn't trust those friends. Makoto said he didn't think he and Shinozuka were friends, but then hesitated, faltering. Shinozuka asked, "What's going on?" Two girls, Shizuka and Saito, looked toward them, surprised to see Makoto with Shinozuka. Saito called Makoto over, asking him to wait and listen to her and Shizuka's apologies. Both were in tears, and Makoto wondered why they were apologizing, feeling that apologizing wouldn't erase their past actions. Shinozuka urged Makoto to leave, reminding him of their conversation. Makoto glanced back at the crying Shizuka and Saito, then told Shinozuka that she was a strong girl, asking if she knew that, and apologized for interrupting their conversation. He held her hand, making Shinozuka blush. Seiko tried to join in by holding Makoto's hand, saying she didn't know what was going on but wanted to be part of it. "Ah, not you, Sayako," Makoto said. She protested, saying it wasn't fair, and decided to hold Shinozuka's hand instead. Shinozuka insisted they weren't friends. Makoto agreed. "You and I are not friends, Shinozuka." He said that while old wounds couldn't be erased, he believed they could have been buried a little. Makoto thanked Shinozuka, calling her Pomeko. Makoto's sister watched them walk away with Shinozuka and Saiko, surprised to see that he had friends. She had thought he was lying about having friends, claiming they were just imaginary people at school. Makoto thanked Shinozuka for the supportive messages she sent him every morning, even though it had been a few days since they last spoke. Their relationship remained that of author and reader. Pomeko sent him messages about her work whenever a new novel came out, and that was the extent of their interaction. For Makoto, that seemed enough. Time passed, and the teacher announced it was time to form groups for the upcoming trip. As the students began to gather and choose their groups, Makoto felt too lazy to join in and assumed he'd be left out. Alongside Shinozuka, a girl asked what they'd do if Shinozuka ended up in their group. Someone else quickly replied, "Ugh, no thanks." A boy chuckled and asked what they'd do with Shinju Makoto. Makoto thought he could manage on his own and wasn't worried about it. He asked if she was sure, and she replied, "Of course." Suddenly, Shinozuka slammed her hand on the table and stood up. She looked directly at Makoto, leaving him confused by her sudden actions. She went to the board, grabbed a piece of chalk from another student, and said she just wanted to finish it and go home. She wrote her name and Makoto's on the board, declaring they were a team of two, asking if anyone had a problem with that. The teacher confirmed it didn't matter they were from different classes, and asked if the students had made their choices. Shinozuka returned to her seat, while Makoto stared at her, his face flushed. She insisted she wasn't trying to get close to him. She just wanted to go home. Makoto replied, "Oh, okay, that's fine." Shinozuka grabbed her bag, preparing to leave, while Makoto turned away. Shinju Makoto and Shinozuka Anri, not friends, just Nyanta and Pomeko. Makoto wondered why they ended up in the same group, thinking about how Nyanta might react to Pomeko's bold actions. Shinozuka explained it was simpler this way. Otherwise, she might end up with people she didn't like. Makoto agreed. She told him to be more direct with his words. He replied he couldn't be as blunt as her. They agreed to stop talking about school for a while. Makoto reflected on how long it had been since he had been alone in an outdoor classroom. Shinozuka changed the subject, asking about his latest chapter and its possible publication. Makoto reminded her that the part he needed to upload tonight was finished, but still needed editing. Publishing. "It's an honor that my hobby is being recognized, but since I'm underage, I'm worried it could cause trouble for my parents." Shinozuka reassured him, saying there were many things to consider. and he should take his time thinking about it. She also reminded him that he would meet his sister, Saeko-chan, the day after tomorrow. Though Saeko-chan appeared aloof, she was passionate about her work, and despite being very cute, she had never had a boyfriend. Makoto noticed Shinozuka blushing and commented that she must really love her sister. Shinozuka, surprised, denied it, saying it was just because they were family. Makoto wondered if his father, whom he hadn't seen in a while, would approve of his novel being published. While lost in thought, Shinozuka snapped him out of it, asking why he looked so gloomy. She suggested they enter a writing contest, and he agreed, asking if 500 words was a reasonable length. They decided to write stories and let Saeko-chan judge them. It was just a friendly competition between him and Pomeko-san. Nothing more. Shinozuka quickly finished, declaring, "I win in speed." Makoto pointed out that speed wasn't the point of the competition, but she told him to be quiet and showed him her story. He handed her his phone, and she smiled as she read it. Watching her, Makoto covered his mouth, wondering if he was smiling. Tears of laughter streamed down his face as Shinozuka teased, asking if he was about to cry and claiming her work was the best. Makoto smiled brightly, saying, "Yeah, you're great, Pomeko-san." She looked at him, chuckling, "Fufu if you say so." The next morning at home, Makoto's mother greeted him, asking if he was leaving early again. He replied, "Yeah, I'm going," heading for the door. His mother asked if something was wrong. "Oh, I don't know how to say this," she said. "Whether you did it or not, once it's a rumor, it becomes the truth. That's the world we live in. You've been arrested for violence, so please stop causing trouble. Don't bring problems to the family." His mother's past words echoed in his mind, and though he wanted to forget them, he couldn't. It wasn't that she was a bad person. She tried her best to be a perfect mother. She asked him to say what he thought before leaving. Makoto reflected on how his mother's words always broke his heart. He wondered how she would react if he told her about his novel being published, realizing she didn't even know he wrote. A high school student selling a novel as a hobby, Makoto wondered how much confidence his mother had in such a venture. He still had time before meeting Sayako that evening, so he decided to think it over at school. He told his mother it was nothing and left. His sister called out, "Oni-chan," and threw him a kuzumochi, wishing him a safe trip. Normally, she never stopped talking about wanting to go with him. At school, in the staff room, a teacher apologized for calling Makoto and Shinozuka. She was surprised by how they seemed to get along as friends. Shinozuka corrected her, saying they weren't friends, and the teacher misunderstood. The teacher reassured them she wasn't asking them to stay quiet or avoid trouble. After all, she was just their homeroom teacher. But as an adult, she was closer to them than family. She offered to help if they needed it. Shinozuka asked the teacher what she meant, and the teacher explained that the world was full of absurdities, with school being a miniature version of that. She didn't tell them to make as many friends as possible, but encouraged them to find someone they could trust, even if it was just one person. Makoto replied, "Sensei, I'm sorry, but even if you trust someone, they'll betray you one day." Shinozuka agreed, adding, "That's right, because you'll be betrayed at some point. You never needed friends in the first place." The teacher asked if they would accept being betrayed. Shinozuka said she didn't understand what the teacher meant. Makoto and Shinozuka exchanged a look, and Shinozuka angrily said, "You're so stupid. Why are you looking at me now?" Makoto denied he was looking at her. The teacher said they could leave once they were done. Shinozuka asked if the teacher was telling them not to skip outdoor class. Makoto shrugged, unsure of the teacher's intentions. As they left, someone interrupted with, "Excuse me." A girl approached Makoto, greeting him with a long time no see, and calling him Makoto. Confused, Makoto asked, "Long time no see. Sorry, but who are you?" The girl replied in surprise, "Huh? Are you kidding?" Makoto didn't remember her at all and wondered if this was a joke. She introduced herself as Kisaragi. "Are you the one who played the fake confession joke on me?" he asked. "Have you ever made that face?" He didn't remember anything. Makoto finally replied, "Long time no see, Kisaragi-san. Miss, I'm sorry, but I really have to go." She asked him to wait a moment, explaining it was part of a punishment game, and she had no choice. She added that she was afraid her friends would hate her if she didn't participate. Kisaragi confesses her feelings for Makoto and suggests they start fresh. Makoto questions, "Start fresh? Is this some kind of fake confession?" He's confused. Usually he'd brush it off gently, but she had mocked him before. He doesn't want to discuss it with Pomeko-san around. Kisaragi apologizes and asks if he'd like to go on a date this weekend. Makoto declines, leaving her puzzled. Kisaragi insists, "You were forced into this," trying to justify her actions while attempting to hug him. Shinozuka interrupts, saying, "That's enough." She reminds Kisaragi that Makoto has an outdoor class with her and doesn't have time for this. Kisaragi is confused, asking why Shinozuka is interfering. Shinozuka points out that Kisaragi interrupted them first. Holding Makoto's hand, Shinozuka tells Kisaragi to leave. Makoto is surprised by the gesture. Shinozuka pulls him away, saying, "Let's go, Shinju," and he follows. Kisaragi stands frozen, glaring at Shinozuka. Shinozuka warns Makoto he'll be late for his date with Seiko-chan, teasing him about his shyness. She cautions him that Kisaragi is a dangerous type. Makoto stares at his hand where Shinozuka had held it. She offers to hold his hand again, but he refuses, worried she might blush. She asks what he means, and he recalls the warmth of her touch. A girl named Miyazaki called out to Makoto, congratulating him and reminding him of her part. She asked if he planned to attend the party after class. Makoto, in return, congratulated her and addressed her as Miyazaki-san before politely asking if he could leave. Her confusion grew, and she called his name in disbelief. She wondered what was going on with him, but decided to talk to him later, as they attended the same high school. Miyazaki remarked that she saw Makoto with Shinozuka and another stunning woman, which caught her off guard. Saito noted that Shinozuka was incredibly attractive, with flawless skin that made her a bit envious. She then asked if Shinozuka was her real name. Miyazaki then asked Saito-chan what kind of person Shinozuka was, in case any rumors about Makoto started spreading. Saito-chan explained that people had labeled Shinozuka as some kind of thug, but she wasn't sure whether it was true. Shinozuka always kept to herself in class, after all. Miyazaki observed that Shinozuka didn't seem close to Makoto, doubting that their conversations were anything friendly. Makoto's younger sister recalled how Kisaragi had been searching for Makoto earlier, though he didn't respond. Miyazaki mentioned she'd heard rumors about Kisaragi once having a good relationship with him. Makoto's younger sister noted that while Kisaragi might seem quiet and reserved at first, she was actually quite popular with boys. Saito had heard similar things, describing her as a princess type. Makoto's younger sister reminded them of something happening with Nanako. Saito then asked if Miyazaki wanted to attend the same school as them. She agreed, and Makoto's sister praised her brother, calling him a really nice person. She also remarked on how his attitude had changed, that he was less frightening now. He even accepted her kuzumochi. She wondered if Shinozuka was the reason behind this change in him. Hearing all this made Miyazaki feel a pang of sadness. They all had feelings for Makoto, but they had all made mistakes along the way. One day in elementary school, Miyazaki Shizuka was hurt, and sadness filled her heart. She realized Makoto had been unfairly blamed. The incident occurred while they were joking, but when she tripped, Makoto took the fall. She should have spoken up, but before she could, her classmates turned against him. Makoto never hurt her, yet in that moment she couldn't find her voice. To the children, school was everything, and being condemned by friends crushed Makoto's spirit, making him withdrawn. Miyazaki feared that even in high school, Makoto would remain the same. She knew she should clear up the misunderstanding, but was terrified of being blamed and hated by everyone. In her fear, she avoided him and ran away. She dreamt of making things right in high school, but life, as it often does, refused to be that simple. From that day on, she betrayed Makoto, a mistake driven by her own weakness. Makoto's sister revealed that she knew what had happened. Miyazaki was stunned when she learned that Makoto had already heard about the incident. She was told that others had thrown pebbles at him and ruined his belongings, thinking he had hurt Shizuka. Yet the truth remained a mystery. Haruka asked if it was true that her brother had done something bad. A friend confirmed it, saying, "Maybe he's just pretending to be nice to his family." Another added, "He's two-faced." His mother wasn't Makoto's real mother, and their friends made her believe her brother was a bad person, destined to be alone because of it. Haruka was greeted by her mother with, "Welcome home, Haruka. How was school?" Haruka replied that only Oni-chan had hurt a girl, causing her mother to gasp in disbelief. At that moment, Makoto arrived home, saying, "I'm back." His mother called out to both of them, "Makoto? Haruka." Haruka couldn't help but think about how her brother always played with Shizuka-chan. She longed for more attention from him and thought of teasing him a little. She shared her thoughts with her mother. But over time, Makoto grew even more distant. Haruka waited for the right moment to apologize and make up for her actions, but now she realized how foolish she had been. When she finally wanted to show kindness, it was too late. To him, she was now a stranger, and all he gave her were polite, distant replies. Regret consumed her, wishing she had been nicer sooner. This was the mistake she had made. Saito asked if they knew the rumor about Makoto attacking someone. Haruka asked if it was about the library incident. Saito, still confused, said, "I always thought so, but on the day of our high school graduation, I learned the truth." Miyazaki spoke up, revealing that during an earthquake, Makoto had tried to shield her from falling objects. Saito, bewildered, asked, "What?" Miyazaki stood, ran off, and apologized, saying she was sorry for not speaking up sooner. "Goodbye," she said, and Saito called after her, "Wait!" Then the truth hit her. Makoto had protected her. Indeed, there had been a massive earthquake that day. She remembered how Makoto rushed toward her, and the students cried out, "Shinjuku! Attack! Makoto!" drawing everyone's attention with that shocking cry. Then voices accused Makoto. "Makoto attacked me!" Doubts flooded her mind, shaking her belief in her dear friend. There was no way anyone could look at Makoto without disdain, thinking they had misjudged him. Alone, he cried. A student asked Saito if she could accompany her to the infirmary, while another commented on how adorable she looked without glasses. Attacking someone just because they're cute and shy is the worst. The boys vowed to protect her. Saito had been shy too, and back then she didn't have many friends. It was the first time someone had treated her so kindly, and it made her immensely happy. She should have asked Makoto about his intentions back then, but with everyone's behavior, she couldn't bring herself to do it. The incident led to new friendships, and Saito learned to be more fashionable. School became so much fun that she forgot all about the attack. Haruka mentioned how popular Saito was in 9th grade, even having received confessions from several boys. Saito shocked Miyazaki and Haruka by revealing she had turned them all down. Saito admitted that no one was as cool as Makoto-kun, though she didn't know why she thought that way. When someone revealed the truth, she saw him again that same day. Happy memories of the library came rushing back. Saito realized she had romantic feelings for him. She called out desperately for his attention, but Makoto-kun didn't even look at her. In that moment, Saito understood what she had done to him all this time. She realized that was her mistake. She had thought she'd get a chance to speak to him in high school, but that was no longer possible. Miyazaki regretted it deeply. Even now, Makoto remained important to her, but she knew it was all her fault. Haruka pointed out that if only she had apologized sooner. Saito replied, if only she had approached him sooner. But no matter how badly they wanted to apologize, it seemed meaningless now. Makoto had no reason to trust them. What could they do? Saito longed to apologize immediately, and Haruka shared the same wish, but Makoto wasn't even looking at them. Miyazaki suggested they must do something to bring back Makoto's kind heart before the dad could even apologize. They all agreed to take action. Haruka promised to do her best, and Miyu decided to try talking to Makoto more, but Miyazaki warned them not to contact him directly. Saito was confused, asking what she meant after they had just agreed to act. Haruka supported Miyazaki, understanding that since they had hurt Makoto, they had no right to approach him. Invading his personal space wasn't acceptable, and words of regret now meant nothing. They no longer had the right to love him. When Shinazuka, the delinquent girl, managed to recapture Makoto's heart, they realized they must support her completely. Miyazaki and Saito were initially puzzled, but soon they understood that while they couldn't undo their mistakes, they could support Shinazuka-san. Saito agreed, and they decided to help Shinazuka-san and Makoto's relationship grow, supporting them however they could. Their focus shifted to the upcoming event, where they needed to ensure nothing would disrupt it, especially stopping Kisaragi-san and Nanako-san from causing trouble. They shared a laugh, united in their new mission. Though the reason they came together wasn't ideal, they were happy to have connected, promising to do their best and keeping it all a secret between them. An alliance was born. The next morning, Haruka gave Makoto a kuzumochi, something he used to love as a child. He pretended to enjoy the kuzumochi for her sake, though in reality, he didn't care for it. He wondered why she remembered his old likes. He had always thought, I must protect my sister, every time she called him Oni-chan, but now he felt nothing when she did. He wondered why Miyazaki was acting as though nothing had changed, trying to talk to him like when they were children. They'd always been close, but now, despite everything looking the same, he felt numb inside. What about the sadness on Saito's face? Why was she so interested in him? He remembered the times they read together, how he could forget the past when he was with her. But if she looked at him with those kind eyes now, he knew he wouldn't feel anything. Makoto realized that the way he was now wasn't their fault. He neither liked nor hated them. He felt no contempt. He had simply been consumed by the world's badness, unable to control his feelings. He couldn't trust anyone anymore. No matter what anyone said to him, his heart was numb. He felt it was too late. He was broken. Seiko reminded him she would call his father. Makoto doubted his father would agree to the call. "Dad, it's been a while. Sorry to call so early, but I need a bit of your time if that's okay." Makoto told his father about the novel he wrote, which was soon to be published. With newfound courage, he shared it with his father, who listened attentively. "I'll accompany you to every contract meeting. There are so many scams in publishing. You're still young, so you need a guardian." "Thank you, Dad." "Still speaking so politely, huh, Dad?" "No, I'm sorry. It's definitely your fault, Makoto. There are people who recognize you in many different ways. Be proud of yourself. You are my pride. Congratulations," she said. Seiko called his name, promising to ask him again later. She expressed her desire to turn his story into a book and share it with the world. She asked if he would allow her to put his words on paper, as bringing joy through books was her job. Makoto paused, contemplating his decision. Shinozuka, nearby, overheard and said that if Nyanta's story became a book, she would do her best to support it. In the end, Makoto agreed, admitting that his decision might cause trouble for his family, but he still wanted his story to be published. With tears in his eyes, he pleaded, "Please." Seiko-chan congratulated him, and Shinozuka hugged him as he cried. Thank you so much," he whispered. It was through their support that he found the strength to move forward. His father observed from a distance. That evening, Makoto returned home. His mother greeted him, asking why he hadn't told her anything. He realized his father must have informed her. Makoto apologized for not sharing sooner. She reassured him that it was good news and there was no need for apologies. Then she asked if the company was trustworthy. Makoto reassured her that there was no trouble to worry about. He asked her for this one chance, promising he wouldn't ask for anything more. In return, he would attend a good university and work at a respectable company, going wherever she wished him to go. He turned to his stepmother and, bowing his head, asked her to allow him to publish his book. She paused, then suggested they celebrate by going out to eat with Haruka, the three of them. He refused, saying it wasn't necessary. She pressed, asking why and why he hadn't consulted her about this matter. "I don't trust you," Makoto replied, his voice steady. "I'm afraid the conversation will go wrong if I tell you about it. You don't believe in me. But I do understand your dreams," his stepmother said, her voice softening. His words struck her deeply. Makoto reminded her of how she never trusted or listened to him during his elementary and middle school years. There was no reason for him to trust her now. "It's not that I don't trust you," she replied. "I just think I didn't teach you properly." But Makoto disagreed, seeing the issue as her failure to understand his feelings. With no one believing in him, Makoto's heart felt shattered. His stepmother called his name. "I'm sorry for what I said," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "If I ever cause trouble for you again, I will leave immediately." As Makoto turned to leave, his stepmother sank to her knees, tears flowing. "I'm so sorry, Makoto. I truly am." But Makoto felt nothing anymore. As he left, Haruka stopped him, her eyes filled with tears. "Please don't leave. I can't stand being apart from you." Haruka added, "If you'd feel better living alone, maybe that's what you should do." She mentioned that their mother worried too much, and suggested Makoto could use their grandfather's old house, but their mother quickly disagreed, insisting, No, and adding that Makoto was the child she was proud of and didn't want him to leave. Haruka then told their mother that Makoto didn't trust them because of the way they had treated him. However, she believed things could improve over time, and until then, they would have to wait. Haruka tried to comfort her mother, telling Makoto to leave his mother with her. She too shed tears, urging him to live peacefully and not let anyone disturb him. Makoto had never seen his stepmother so vulnerable. He tried not to feel anything, despite the emotions surrounding him. But was that truly the case? He patted Haruka's head and admitted that he didn't fully understand himself, but he was grateful for her. Haruka smiled, saying she would send him off with a smile. Makoto, glancing at his stepmother, wondered what expression Haruka had as she looked at her heart broken but trying to smile. Probably a frightening one. The next morning, as Makoto prepared for school, he encountered Shinozuka on the road. She greeted him with a cheerful, "Good morning, Nayanta. No, Shinju." She mentioned feeling tired and asked if he was too. Makoto replied, "Yeah, a lot happened yesterday." Shinozuka understood, saying she'd go ahead, but Makoto stopped her, wanting to walk with her. Shinozuka warned that walking to school together might spark rumors. Makoto shrugged, saying the rumors were ridiculous, and it was too late to care about them now. As they walked, he noticed how much Shinozuka resembled Seiko-san. He told her it felt right to walk with her today, making her blush. He also asked why she wore glasses. Shinozuka hesitated before responding, "Okay, I get it, but don't expect me to take responsibility for anything." When he returned home, Makoto's mother handed him a key to Age-chan's house, along with all the Otoshirama money she had saved up for him. His stepmother, admitting she wasn't ready to let him go, acknowledged how much trouble she had caused him. She promised to talk to his father so they could face him properly one day. She reminded him to eat well, clean his room, wash his clothes, and avoid spending money on useless things. She expressed confidence in him, but told him if he ever got into trouble, he was always welcome to return home, and she'd help him, just as before. Now, Makoto was living alone, without any real preparations. Shinozuka remarked, "Living alone, huh? I'm so jealous." She teased him, asking if his grandfather's house didn't have furniture, and if all he needed was clothes and a toothbrush. Makoto admitted that was mostly true, but he still had a few things to buy. Shinozuka offered to help him shop. Makoto never imagined this day would come. Shinozuka said, "It's okay. From what I hear, your mother needs time to face herself too. Once the need for books decreases, everything will fall into place." She paused, and Makoto asked, "What's going on?" Shinozuka suddenly asked, "Does this mean you won't be coming to the food court anymore?" Makoto was confused. When he thought about it, he realized he often went to the food court because he didn't want to go home. He replied, "Sometimes people go there to flirt with girls, so it's not a good place to write. Is that right?" He added, "You're always welcome at my house anytime." This made Shinozuka blush, surprised by his words. He reassured her that there were still plenty of people at the food court. The moments Makoto spent talking with Pameko-san were special to him. Shinozuka hesitantly asked if he truly meant his house. She quickly clarified that she wasn't lonely and wasn't asking for that reason. She admitted that it could indeed be hard to focus on writing when people were flirting. After thinking it over, she agreed, yeah, it would be nice to find a quiet place to write. But Makoto was concerned about leaving her alone, which was why he invited her to his house. Shinozuka blushed, asking if he was sure she wouldn't be a bother. She pointed out that they weren't exactly friends. Makoto reassured her, saying, "We may not be friends, but it's fine. You can come to my house to write." When they arrived at school, Makoto asked Shinozuka if the atmosphere around them felt strange. She noticed the stares too, and agreed, "Yeah, everyone keeps looking at us." Makoto joked, "Maybe it's because of your glasses." She shot back, "That's not it at all. It's probably because you don't have that weird smile on your face like usual." Their classmates whispered and talked about them. Shinozuka groaned, "Damn it, because they're talking about us so much. Now I can't even read the latest chapter." Makoto sighed, "I really tried my best this time." Saito showed up, breathless from running to class. She smiled. "I made it in time. God, I'm exhausted." She noticed Makoto and Shinozuka talking and went back to her seat, still smiling. A girl asked Makoto if he had changed his style, commenting that he looked different today. Makoto wondered who she was talking about. He replied, "Not really," though the girl was Mizuki, whom he had ignored last time. Mizuki was pleased that he was speaking more naturally now, and cheerfully said, "I saw you two talking earlier, and you're a really cute couple." Saito quickly reminded Mizuki not to bother them, adding that she was glad Mizuki didn't confess her feelings. Mizuki then asked if it was okay, since she wanted Makoto to help her heal her broken heart. Saito snapped, saying it was rude to ask that when they were clearly trying to read. Shinozuka shouted at Mizuki, asking, "Why do you think Makoto and I are a couple? Do you want me to slap you?" Mizuki patted Shinozuka's head, teasing, "You don't look scary with those glasses, but you sure sound like a barking Pomeranian. By the way, I heard you're coming to Makoto's house." Saito apologized for interrupting their writing time and promised to take care of Mizuki. She pulled Mizuki away, leaving Makoto and Shinozuka both bewildered. Shinozuka was no longer in the mood to read light novels. She suggested, "How about we plan shopping for your new place?" Makoto, unsure of what he needed, pointed out that he needed to buy a cup. She asked if he meant a coffee cup since he always drank coffee. He said, "No, I need a cup for you." Shinozuka looked at him, blushing, and asked, "My cup? It's nice to have one, but, well, things like that happen. As they waited for school to end at the mall, Shinazuka asked, "Have we bought everything?" Makoto asked if she really didn't want a cup. She said there must be one at Oji-chan's house and that they were only together to write, so there was no need to go that far. Makoto agreed, saying they weren't friends. She called him, urging them to get home quickly since they had a lot of work to do. Makoto apologized, saying he needed to use the bathroom. He put down his bag and asked her to wait for him. She agreed. When Makoto took longer than expected, Shinazuka wondered if he had gotten lost. Deciding to pass the time, she started reading his light novel, as she hadn't been able to during lunch. As she began reading, she heard footsteps and a voice calling, "Shinju, why did it take you so long?" She looked up to see the girls surrounding her, all surprised by her presence. Shinazuka was startled. One girl said, "Long time no see, Henri," while another asked, "What are you doing here?" She replied, "Waiting for a friend." They teased her, asking, "Do you really have any friends?" Shinazuka, trembling, clutched her bag tightly. One girl asked, "Are you still writing that obnoxious light novel?" Another asked, "Let me borrow your phone like last time." Someone else laughed. "It's so funny that Momo took your smartphone. Your best friend finally gave you a complete makeover for high school, huh? That's scary. Bet the person you're waiting for is a weirdo too. We'll call Momo too. Haven't talked to her in a while, right?" Shinazuka told them to shut up. Makoto returned and apologized for taking so long. He told Shinazuka, "You don't have to hold on to our things so tightly." Shinazuka smiled at him. He then said, "Let's go home." She replied, "Okay, let's go." One of the girls, surprised, asked, "Is that Henri's friend? Don't tell me it's her boyfriend." Another chimed in, "You're kidding, right? I thought she was a weirdo." One girl tried to talk to Makoto, introducing herself as Henri-chan's old friend. Makoto ignored her, taking Shinazuka's bag like a gentleman and saying, "I'll carry this too." The girls whispered, "That girl is really no good. She's just toying with you." One girl suggested, "Instead of going with a bad girl, why not join us for karaoke?" Another girl said, "Did you hear? Henri's writing some weird light novel. It's obnoxious, right?" Makoto glared at them, and the girls seemed excited to see him look their way. They said it was better to hang out with them than with a weirdo who writes light novels. They asked if he knew that. Makoto told them, "You should never go near Shinazuka again. I'll never forgive you if you make my friend cry." Shinazuka glanced back as Makoto took her hand. "Let's go, Shinazuka," he said. They walked away together, leaving the girls watching them in silence. Shinazuka began to cry, and Makoto gently teased, "Oh, don't cry, you're a Yankee." Yet, she had cried before, when stones were thrown at her. With a sharp exclamation, she denied it. Her heart was a whirlwind of emotions. Makoto handed her a box and said, "I bought you a cup. Forget the bad things." It was the same cup she had eyed earlier, the one that seemed to change her expression when they were out shopping. Makoto quickly added, "I wasn't watching you the whole time, so don't worry." He smiled, saying, "It's to thank you for staying with me today." Shinazuka, touched, thanked him for the thoughtful gift. Makoto told her to decide, would she laugh or cry? It was then that Shinazuka truly understood her teacher's words. She recalled him saying, "I won't forgive you if you make my friend cry." Makoto smiled, calling her expression odd, and continued, "To find someone you can trust completely. If it's Shinju, would you mind if he betrayed you?" Could they be friends? She no longer felt alone in Makoto's home. Together, they wrote their novels. Makoto suggested a break and offered coffee. "Yes, please," she replied. He noted they hadn't heard from Seiko yet, and wondered if their publishing talks were progressing. "That's true," Shinazuka agreed, mentioning the editorial department's busy schedule, especially with finding illustrators. She predicted that soon he'd be swamped with revisions. She asked about his latest project. "That's true," he confirmed. Makoto asked her opinion on her romance novel. She gave him a look that left him confused. "Do you really call this a romance?" she asked, pointing out the unexpected dancing and fight scenes. Was it that bad? He wondered. He asked if her novels truly contained love. Blushing, she admitted she had never experienced love, so she didn't understand it. He confessed he hadn't dated anyone either. Shinazuka blushed again, sipping her coffee. "I don't have a crush," she said. "I'm just writing about fantasies." "Are you sure?" Makoto pressed. "Of course!" she exclaimed. Makoto had thought her writing was based on experience, but she turned away, denying it. They drank their coffee in silence for a while. Changing the subject, Shinozuka asked if he had prepared for their upcoming trip, just 3 days away. Makoto, puzzled, asked, "Preparation? Do we need to prepare anything?" He felt no need for anything special. Shinozuka, impressed by his laid-back attitude, smiled. She listed her trip suggestions: comfortable clothes and shoes, a good bag, and a well-planned route for the park. Excited, she checked her phone and mentioned a new popcorn flavor to try and where to find the stands. Makoto noted her happiness. She insisted he take the trip seriously if he wanted to enjoy Destinyland fully. He paused, then nodded. Okay. Shinozuka felt content being with him. They were in the same group, and she promised to help him plan everything. He smiled, encouraging her to enjoy the trip, and she eagerly agreed. She excitedly talked about visiting the monkey house, genuinely thrilled about Destinyland. Makoto was surprised by her happiness. He thanked her for the thoughtful planning. Looking around, Makoto spotted Saito, Miyazaki, and his sister. Miyazaki met his gaze but kept walking. Shinozuka complimented Makoto's childhood, comparing it to hers. He reassured her that hers wasn't that different, causing her to blush. Casually, he mentioned he was working on another romance novel and asked if she wanted to read it before it was made public. Shinozuka agreed but teased Makoto, claiming he wasn't cut out for romance writing. Makoto conceded, admitting his story couldn't match Pomeko-sensei's work. But Shinozuka disagreed, downplaying her expertise, inadvertently drawing the attention of nearby students. Smiling, Makoto invited her to read the story at his house after school. Later, at Makoto's house, Shinozuka advised against publishing under the pen name Nayante, arguing the story didn't feel like a romance. Makoto asked about a specific scene, hoping for approval, but Shinozuka criticized it, suggesting his strengths were in fantasy. Still, she acknowledged the story had merit, admitting she could relate to it, though it made her slightly embarrassed to read. Relieved, Makoto was happy she connected with it. Reflecting on the story, he realized he had unconsciously modeled the characters after himself and Shinozuka, which explained the awkwardness. He suggested deleting it, but Shinozuka quickly objected, encouraging him to keep it as an entertainment project. She gave her support. Touched, Makoto agreed to continue working on it. As time passed, Shinozuka realized it was time to go home. She planned to stop by a convenience store for dinner, but Makoto suggested they have dinner together instead. He proposed a small party before their trip. Eager to help, Shinozuka agreed to assist with the preparations. Shinozuka struggled with chopping vegetables. Concerned she might hurt herself, Makoto asked her to clean the kitchen while he handled the chopping. She agreed, and Makoto took care of the cooking. Once the meal was ready, Shinozuka was impressed. After tasting it, she gave Makoto a thumbs up. They enjoyed the meal together, laughing and having a great time. As the evening ended with joy and laughter, Makoto apologized for letting her do the dishes, but she insisted he focus on Destinyland. She reminded him to memorize the park map and review her notes. Uncertain about her dishwashing skills, Makoto wondered if she might break something. Shinozuka, however, was excited about meeting Muki the next day. She wondered how long the Splash River line would be. Makoto asked if it usually took long, and Shinozuka hoped they'd get a good spot for the parade. More than anything, she was excited, unsure if she'd be able to sleep that night. Shinozuka's excitement was contagious. Makoto smiled at her enthusiasm. He told her she couldn't enjoy the day without getting some sleep. Spending time together as a couple felt like something real friends do. Shinozuka turned to him, acknowledging the importance of sleep. During his high school field trip, Makoto had spent time alone, disconnected from the happy chatter around him. Even during bus activities, he was ignored. The person sitting next to him had moved, leaving him alone. Field trips had never been enjoyable for him, but today was different. He was ready for this new day. Looking at the clock, it was still 6:30. He waited outside Shinozuka's house. As she came out, told her mother they were leaving and that she'd bring souvenirs. Her mother smiled warmly, pleased to see her daughter so excited. Shinozuka protested, but her mother knew when she was truly happy. Shinozuka said goodbye and saw Makoto waiting outside. She looked at him and asked, "What is it, Shinju?" Makoto, a bit shy, replied, "Good morning. I guess I'm a little early." Shinozuka smiled and said, "No, let's just take a walk in front of Kahema Station." She noticed her mother still standing by the door, smiling. Quickly closing the door, Shinozuka teased, "Oh, Mom, what are you doing?" Makoto apologized for being early and introduced himself to her mother, saying, "I'm Shinju, her friend." Shinozuka's mother greeted him warmly. "Good morning, I am Henri's mother." She asked if he was Makoto-kun, mentioning that Anri and Seiko had spoken about him often. Shinozuka tried to stop her, embarrassed. Mom, stop it, it's too much. She waved them off, telling them to enjoy their time. Shinozuka blushed and reminded Makoto that they had to leave. It was the first time Makoto had seen Shinozuka in her usual outfit, and she looked completely different. Shinozuka turned red and greeted him with a soft, "Good morning." As they walked together, Makoto mentioned her outfit. Shinozuka blushed and stammered. My outfit." She explained that she had taken extra care to dress appropriately today. "It suits you perfectly and you look so cute," Makoto whispered. Shinozuka blushed deeply at the compliment. She smiled shyly and reminded him that he had finally given her a compliment. He quickly waved it off, saying it was nothing, and wished her a good day ahead. When the Tate arrived at Kahima Station, Shinozuka was surprised at how quickly they had gotten there. Makoto said that talking about light novels always made time fly by. "If I'm not mistaken, we're supposed to meet in the underground parking lot," he said. With some time to spare, they decided to take a walk. She didn't mind, but thought the only places open were cafes. She suggested they visit the XX restaurant nearby. Makoto smiled, but suddenly a voice greeted them. "Good morning." It was their teacher, who commented that they seemed to get along so well. They both greeted her warmly. Smiling, Makoto and Shinozuka agreed that they had become friends. The teacher wished them a fun time and urged them to make many good memories. Shinozuka confessed that she never imagined she could become friends with Makoto. He replied, "I didn't think I'd be friends with someone like you, an evil-eyed girl." She shot back, "And you always have that creepy fake smile." Makoto agreed, saying he didn't trust anyone. She asked if that was still true now, then quickly told him to ignore it. Makoto replied, "Yeah, I don't trust anyone unconditionally, but I wouldn't betray my friends." "But if it's Shinozuka..." Shinozuka blushed, cutting him off. "Me too, I'd be fine with you." Neither of them was confident, and she awkwardly added, "Wait, I don't know what's going on, but this is getting embarrassing." She changed the subject, pointing out a pair of dirty shoes and saying they needed to go over there. Makoto smiled and teased, "What's that rat-like thing in your hair? It looks pretty scary." She quickly retorted, "That's not a mouse, it's Destiny's mascot, a chinchilla." "Ah, I see," he said, then asked how many of those outfits there were. Shinozuka replied that Muki was real, and there was only one uncle. Makoto apologized and suggested they try to find him in the park, as long as she understood. Shinozuka agreed to take a photo with Maki. She suggested they take a photo together since they were together. Her face turned red as she proposed it. Makoto thought the memories would stay in their hearts and resurface when they were done. Then you tried again and Dextra does take a private photo. Makoto asked whose phone they should use for the photo. He offered his, saying he would send it to her later, but she shyly suggested using both phones. She fiddled with the settings to put the camera in selfie mode. Once she found it, she prepared to take the photo, with Makoto watching her. She asked him to come closer so both of them could be in the shot. He jokingly asked, "How close do you want me to get?" She told him to move in, and he shifted his shoulders back, while she smiled and he looked away. He asked, "Is this close enough?" It was Makoto's first time doing something like this, and Shinozuka admitted it was her first time too. She set a timer for the photo. Noticing his expression, she remarked, "You look a bit strange. The timer's about to start." Makoto wasn't used to this kind of thing and didn't know how to act. They took the photo next to Maki. Shinozuka laughed when she saw it. Both of them looked incredibly tense. It was their first photo together, a keepsake Makoto was happy to have. Shinozuka suggested they fill their pages with more photos today. Makoto joked, asking her to go easy on him, as today had been full of surprises. He asked Shinozuka what was wrong, but she seemed unsure of how to respond. Makoto then wondered if the chapter he had announced earlier that morning had been boring. Shinozuka hesitated before saying no, trying to find the right words. She mentioned that the current environment wasn't her favorite. Makoto asked if she was happy. She glanced at him, blushed, and said yes. She added that she had wanted to visit without the crowd of students around. Makoto, surprised, agreed, and then pulled out his phone, mentioning that it seemed the teacher wouldn't arrive for a while, so he might as well check the novels. He asked Shinozuka if she knew an author named Paguko. She asked, "Paguko?" Just then, the teacher greeted the students, reminding them it was time for roll call. The teacher called the names and shared the day's schedule. They had a school event and would stay until 4 p.m. Afterward, they could head back here and have the rest of the day free. It seemed they could return to Destinyland and then head home. The teacher reminded them to be careful. Shinozuka excitedly said they were heading inside and that they should go now. She pulled him along, but Makoto told her not to run. It could be dangerous. She stopped, assuring him she was fine and he didn't need to worry. They're in Destinyland, she said with excitement. I can't wait. Let's have fun. He replied, yes, but first we need to buy tickets, right? She checked her phone and agreed they should get tickets first, but then she spotted Taki and exclaimed, Taki's right there. I want a picture. She quickly remembered that they should buy tickets first and wasn't sure what to do. Makoto reminded her that while following a plan is important, sometimes it's okay to do what they want without one. She agreed and called out to Taki with excitement. Makoto smiled with satisfaction. They took a photo with Taki, and Shinozuka looked at the picture, her face red from the moment. They got on a roller coaster, and Makoto felt queasy, but they enjoyed snacks together while sitting side by side. Makoto looked at Shinozuka, and she smiled back at him. Shinozuka noticed a Taki headband and picked one up for Makoto, saying he'd look cool wearing it. He hesitated, saying it would be too embarrassing. She excitedly insisted, saying everyone was wearing it, so it would be fine. She placed it on his head, pleased to see it looked good. He whispered, I never thought I'd live long enough to wear something like this on my head. Shinozuka teased that if he didn't like it, he could take it off. She also wore a headband with bunny ears, saying, Mine has ears. This bunny crown is so cute. She asked Makoto how the hat looked on her. Embarrassed, he looked away and mumbled that it looked good. She insisted he look at her and not be embarrassed, or she wouldn't buy it. Still looking away, he said it didn't matter. She asked, Huh? Makoto replied, What? She dismissed it, then pointed to a girl nearby who was crying. Shinozuka assumed something bad had happened to the girl and asked if she could talk to her. Makoto agreed. They walked up to the girl, and Shinozuka gently asked what was wrong. Trying to offer help, Shinozuka asked if she had lost her friends, given how large the place was. The girl replied that she didn't think so. Meanwhile, 3 girls were standing in the distance, whispering about the crying girl. Makoto and Shinozuka turned to look at the 3 girls, who quickly fled, leaving the girl still sobbing. The girl snapped, What the hell? What do you want? I haven't lost anyone! She continued to cry, asking, Why should I not be upset? Shinozuka watched her with a steady gaze. Shinozuka introduced herself and Makoto, explaining they were visiting Destinyland for a field trip. She asked the girl's name. The girl turned away and replied, Okay. Shinozuka smiled at her response. The girl then introduced herself as Hyuzaki Chisa, a 3rd grader in elementary school, and asked them to leave her alone. Shinozuka moved closer and asked, Hyuzaki-san, did those 3 girls just abandon you? Hyuzaki snapped back, That's none of your business. She added that she didn't care about those idiots and couldn't enjoy Destinyland with such jealous people. It's so boring. Shinozuka, surprising Hyuzaki, took off her bunny hat and handed it to her. Fufu, it looks good on you, Shinozuka said. Hyuzaki blinked, still processing the gesture, then asked, Shinozuka turned to Makoto for his opinion. He replied, It's not as cute as yours, but it looks pretty good. Hyuzaki blushed and asked, What? Hyuzaki, flustered, took off her bunny hat and snapped, Shut up, you're making fun of me. Stay away from me. She added that if she could still cry, it was definitely not too late. Shinozuka, trying to help, told Hyuzaki she was wasting her time crying, suggesting they go get a drink instead. Hyuzaki thanked Shinozuka for buying her water. At that moment, Hyuzaki's stomach growled loudly, which surprised her. Her face turned red when she realized what had happened. Shinozuka said with a smile, I see. It's time for lunch. She grabbed Hyuzaki's hand and said, Come on, follow me. Hyuzaki asked where they were going, and Shinozuka cheerfully replied, For lunch. Hyuzaki joked that Shinozuka wasn't good at inviting new friends, but she agreed it was time to eat together. Shinozuka excitedly said she would try the limited edition spaghetti because it came with some cute items. She asked what dish Hyuzaki would choose. Hyuzaki replied, I'll choose that. Hyuzaki checked her phone and realized she had been blocked. She quietly muttered that she didn't know why she even came to Destinyland today. Makoto and Shinozuka exchanged a confused look, unsure of what she meant. Shinozuka asked if the stuffed animal on Hyuzaki's bag was. Before Shinozuka could finish her sentence, Hyuzaki quickly interrupted, exclaiming that the stuffed animal was her precious friend, and asking if Shinozuka had a problem with that. She added that Shinazuka shouldn't mock the pugs from Tetsuro the Bloody Brave. Shinazuka calmly responded that she had never talked to anyone on the bus and was always alone. Her words confused both Hyuzaki and Makoto, who didn't understand the context. Shinazuka smiled at Makoto, her expression unreadable. Makoto, with a touch of bitterness, said that no matter how many times he apologized, everyone still ignored him. And before he knew it, the whole school hated him. Shinazuka shared that when she upset the group's leader, no one spoke to her anymore. Makoto mentioned that when he protected a girl, he was treated like a pervert and even called a criminal. Shinazuka added that she had allegedly stolen a boy she didn't even like. Makoto continued, explaining that he once met a friend and found a delinquent at their meeting spot. Hyuzaki, clearly confused, asked, "What, huh? What are you talking about?" Shinazuka recalled how her friend had shared her secret with the whole class, and everyone had laughed at her. Makoto said he had become so unpopular at school that he became a burden to his family. Shinazuka, who had stopped crying, and Makoto, feeling betrayed by those around him, shared their moments of frustration. Makoto smiled at Shinazuka, while Hyuzaki simply stared at them, trying to process everything. Realizing there was nothing he could do to help her, Makoto decided to shift the conversation and asked Hyuzaki if she liked Tetsuro. Saying it was a great story about an oppressed hero who went on a journey with a demon and grew up, Hyuzaki was surprised that Makoto wasn't mocking Tetsuro. He asked if there was anything else Hyuzaki liked. She mentioned that she also liked Death Game, Kara Hajimaru Ai Sky Sakatsu. Shinazuka exclaimed, "Oh, I like that too. It's so funny." She eagerly asked Hyuzaki about her favorite characters. Hyuzaki hesitated and then asked if it was okay to talk about it. Makoto, a bit confused, reassured her that now was a great time to talk about what she liked. Hyuzaki smiled and began discussing her favorite characters with them. But then she suddenly felt annoyed, thinking she had spoken too fast. She said, "It's terrible, isn't it? I don't know why I'm like this." She mentioned that her dream had come true, but the jealousy of others made her feel out of control. She had been looking forward to this day. Makoto and Shinazuka looked at each other, clearly confused by Hyuzaki's words. Shinazuka, trying to lighten the mood, asked if Hyuzaki wanted to join them today since they were in Destiny Land. Hyuzaki shook her head, saying she didn't want to disturb their date. Shinazuka blushed and waved her hand, trying to explain that it wasn't a date. Makoto remained silent. He added, "This isn't a date, it's a field trip." Hyuzaki retorted that if it was just the two of them hanging out, it would be considered a date. Makoto agreed that they were spending time together, but insisted they should include Hyuzaki and called her Paguko. Shinazuka was confused by this. Hyuzaki exclaimed, "Hey, who's Paguko?" She asked Makoto how he knew, and Shinazuka, now also surprised, asked, "Paguko, a rider?" Makoto explained that the cute pug on Hyuzaki's bag and the mention of riding earlier made him suspicious, though he didn't expect it to be so easy to figure out her identity. Hyuzaki was taken aback, and Shinazuka seemed to understand. Hyuzaki, worried, asked if Makoto would mock her like the others. Makoto looked at her, and Shinazuka quickly interjected, saying, "Hyuzaki, Shinju wouldn't do that." Makoto confirmed, "I won't laugh at you." Shinazuka said they needed to find Maki and called her Paguko. Hyuzaki insisted she should not be called Paguko, but agreed they should go. They smiled and walked together. They participated in the parade, enjoying all the fun games. Shinazuka, excited, mentioned that she had never taken so many photos and wished she could take one with Maki and Hyuzaki, but they couldn't find him. Makoto called Hyuzaki, saying it was time to go home. They needed to return to the meeting spot. He asked her if she was coming along, but she stayed silent, so he called her name again. He reassured her she'd be fine, though he couldn't ask her to hold on any longer. And so Hyuzaki, Makoto, and Shinazuka became friends, bound by the strange truth that even strangers could be trusted in certain moments. Makoto suggested they not say goodbye today, proposing they return to Destiny Land once more. Hyuzaki smiled, agreeing. "All right, I'll join you again." And they laughed together. Shinazuka promised to keep in touch, and Hyuzaki simply replied, "Of course." She walked toward her bus, sitting down. The girls from earlier were gossiping and whispering. Hyuzaki ignored them, checking her phone as a new message popped up in her inbox. "What is it, Pomeko Nyanta? What's going on?" Hyuzaki recognized those two, just like her, and understood immediately. A girl sitting next to her said, "Hey, that website?" Hyuzaki exclaimed, "What?" The girl's curiosity piqued, and she asked if Hyuzaki could share the URL of the website. But realizing there was no turning back, Hyuzaki steeled herself to take that first brave step. After the field trip, the teacher announced the end of the day. The students were to leave, but the patrol would continue around the park. Shinazuka, concerned about Hyuzaki, mentioned they were going to find Muki, to which Makoto agreed. Shinazuka suggested Makoto should take a picture of Muki to show Hyuzaki. Makoto wondered if Pamiko and Muki could teleport. He had only seen them during the parade before they vanished. Eventually, he realized Shinazuka had mentioned they lived in Destinyland, so they could just ask around. Shinazuka dismissed the idea of finding Muki, lamenting that Hyuzaki wouldn't be able to see him. Makoto replied, knowing Shinazuka had longed to meet Muki. Shinazuka, her face flushed, said it was fine. They should relax, watch the fireworks and parade, enjoy the moment, and then head home. Makoto wasn't sure if that was truly relaxing, but if that's what Shinazuka wanted, he had no objections and followed her. Now, while eating, Shinazuka mentioned that Hyuzaki had sent her a text. She'd made a new friend on the bus, a girl who was chatting with her. Makoto smiled, happy to hear that Hyuzaki was doing well, confident that she would be fine. He was grateful that Shinazuka had the courage to speak to Hyuzaki, for without that, they wouldn't have this relationship. It reminded him that he wouldn't have met Shinazuka if he hadn't written that novel. Makoto couldn't imagine school without Shinazuka. Even without the novel, he believed they would have become friends, because deep down, he had always wanted to be with her. Makoto smiled, lost in thought, while Shinazuka observed him. She asked, "Do you miss Hyuzaki?" He replied that he was simply happy to have Shinazuka here. Her face reddened, confused, and she asked, What do you mean?" Makoto smiled and said, "You're very special to me." Shinazuka, flustered, countered, "No, it's Shinju who's special." She asked him to stop embarrassing her. Makoto, also blushing, turned away and noticed Maki. He quickly pointed him out to Shinazuka. "It's Maki! Let's go after him. This is our last chance." Shinazuka, thinking Muki had gone to the witch's castle, agreed. The crowd was thick, and they feared getting separated. Holding hands, both blushing, they stayed close. Makoto joked that it would be terrible if they lost each other. Shinazuka smiled, still holding his hand, her eyes scanning for Muki, but he was nowhere to be seen. Shinju, today was really fun," Shinazuka said. Makoto agreed. "I had a great time too," and confessed that he used to trust only his family, but now he had found someone he could trust here with her. They shared a moment of quiet understanding. As fireworks lit the sky, their eyes met, and they felt the weight of the moment. Shinazuka admired the fireworks, and Makoto wondered about the warmth stirring in his chest. He thought he'd long since lost his feelings, but no, he had met Shinazuka. She, too, admitted, "Shinju is special to me." Makoto realized he had found someone he could love deeply. "Hey, can I call you Ri?" he asked. Shinazuka blinked, surprised, but replied, "What? Well, I don't mind, but can I call you Shinkun?" "Of course," Makoto said with a smile. They turned back to find Muki. Together, they hurried to catch up with him. Makoto thanked Shinazuka for meeting him and promised to always be by her side. She smiled and replied, thanking him and saying she would always be there for him too. They knew this wasn't the end, but the start of something special. The next day, they both prepared for school. Shinazuka carried Muki in her school bag. "Good morning, Muki. It's good to see you again today," she greeted him cheerfully. Suddenly, her mother called her name from downstairs. Shinazuka rushed down, yelling, "Mom, you're so noisy." Makoto waited by the door. "Good morning, Enri," he greeted her. Shinazuka blushed, replying, "Good morning, Shinju." Her mother looked at them, amused. "Makoto, don't let her act like a little girl," her mother teased, pointing out that Shinazuka's bow was crooked. Shinazuka quickly snapped, "I can fix it myself," and told Makoto to follow her. Her mother politely invited Makoto to dinner, which startled Shinazuka. She quickly added, "I'm going," trying to steer things along. Her mother waved them off. As they left, Shinazuka said, "My mom really wants to talk to you." "Really?" Makoto asked. Shinazuka nodded, adding, "She definitely wants to tease you." Makoto smiled but disagreed. "I don't think so." Shinazuka firmly stated, "My mom doesn't call you Shinju in front of me. It's embarrassing." Her face turned red. "Is that so?" Makoto asked, surprised. "Yes, that's right," she replied quickly. Shinazuka asked if Makoto would go with her sister to the editor's office this weekend. Makoto agreed, saying, "Seiko-san works Saturdays. Being an editor must be tough." Shinazuka eagerly said, "Great. After we're done, do you want to go to karaoke?" Makoto smiled, intrigued. Once we finish, we'll head there. And I'll ask Hyuzaki if she wants to join us, Shinozuka added. At school, 2 classmates were chatting about how Shinozuka's mood had changed. Her expression is softer now. Did that happen all of a sudden? One asked. Makoto overheard and listened quietly. One of the boys commented that Shinozuka's tough demeanor had disappeared, wondering if she was now shining. Another said he found her a little cute. As Makoto listened, an uncomfortable feeling stirred in his chest. Was it because they were talking about Henri? Deep down, he realized that his feelings for her were more than just friendship, but he decided not to overthink it. It wasn't love. He didn't want to complicate things with Henri. He wondered if he was just deceiving himself. As he pondered, Shinozuka approached, asking, "What's wrong, Shinju?" She told him it was time to head home. "Okay, let's go," he replied. Just then, someone called out, "Shin?" It was Mizuki, but Saito intervened, pushing her aside, and Mizuki complained, "I just want to go home with you." Saito apologized, assuring them there was nothing to worry about. Shinozuka was left surprised at the whole exchange. After a brief goodbye, Makoto simply said, "Goodbye," before following Shinozuka. Shinozuka looked away, a hint of jealousy in her expression. Makoto noticed and asked, "What's the matter? Are you hungry?" She asked if he and Saito were close, wondering if they needed to make peace. Shinozuka lowered her head, clearly bothered. Makoto reassured her, saying, "You're the most important to me." She replied, "I don't think so." An awkward silence settled between them. Finally, they decided to head home. At Makoto's house, Shinozuka confessed that, growing up, she had always been afraid of men. They often treated her selfishly, mocked her, and made fun of her. She told Makoto about her childhood friend, Nikaido, who used to tease her. Although Nikaido was rude and she didn't like it, she had learned to live with it. Even after entering high school, he still interacted with her, though his behavior scared her, but he wasn't as bad as she initially thought. She continued, explaining that Nikaido had a fiancé, but still spoke to her, which made the girls in her class uncomfortable. Makoto stopped her, saying, "Henri, that's enough. You don't need to share anymore." She nodded, agreeing to stop. Shinozuka took Makoto's hand, urging him to hold it. She explained that in the past, her hands would shake when thinking about the past or when she wrote, and even when they were together at the restaurant, she could forget it. But when alone, the memories would return, making her hands tremble. But now, she emphasized, "I don't shake anymore." That day, at the fireworks, when she held his hand, she had felt calm. Shinozuka said, "Makoto, you healed my heart. Now it's my turn to heal yours." Makoto couldn't hold back his tears as she drew closer. He longed to play soccer with everyone, and she responded, "Yes, I want to see the school too." "My sister is cute, though a bit silly," he joked. She laughed, replying, "Yes, I really want to have dinner with my family," he added. "Yes," she agreed. "I want someone to hug me." Makoto realized that his past no longer mattered to him, though deep down, he knew it wasn't true. He was simply trying not to look back. Shinozuka comforted him, saying it was okay. "I'll always be with you." Makoto couldn't lie to himself anymore. He realized that he loved Shinozuka. She asked, "What's wrong?" He wiped his tears and said, "I think I could write a good love story. This is how I feel right now." After their meeting, Makoto marveled at the size of the building. Shinozuka commented that, despite it being Saturday, there were many people in suits. Makoto noted, "Seiko works for a great company," to which Shinozuka agreed, recalling her surprise when she first visited the building. Makoto knew it was a large publishing house, but hadn't realized the building was this massive. Shinozuka encouraged him, saying, "We're here today for your meeting." Makoto looked at her, his worry evident, and said, "Yes, I know." Shinozuka told Makoto to inform the receptionist of his name, wondering if he could manage to do so. Makoto calmly smiled and said, "Yes, I can." Concerned, Shinozuka asked if she should speak for him or call her sister to pick him up. Makoto smiled at her and said he was happy she came along. She returned the smile, saying, "Really?" "Yes, I was here." Just then, Seiko appeared, apologizing for making them wait and explaining that she had been working since the previous day. Shinozuka asked if she was okay, and Seiko replied, "No, not at all." She smiled and greeted Makoto, saying it was nice to meet him. He responded warmly, saying, "It's nice to meet you too." Seiko led them to her editor's office, saying, "Let's have a good meeting." Makoto and Shinozuka walked together, holding hands tightly. Seiko suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my god, you guys are holding hands." She teasingly asked if they were a couple. Shinozuka, flustered, quickly responded, "No, we're not a couple," her face turning red with embarrassment. Saeko wondered if that was why they were so distant, commenting that it seemed like something young people did these days. She added that her sister had asked for details when they were at home. They entered the editor's office, and Makoto looked at an illustration. He mentioned that he had all the books in that series, and even had a poster for the anime adaptation, which he was planning to buy on his way home. He was excited that the work was being adapted into a book, just like his. Shinozuka listened to him eagerly. She asked if he was happy, and he replied with enthusiasm, saying it was wonderful and full of dreams. Saeko and her sister watched Makoto, seeing how excited he was by what he saw. Saeko reminded them that they needed to have a meeting to discuss a new dream, and began leading them to the meeting room. Shinozuka was asked to wait outside, and she wished Makoto good luck. He thanked her and assured her that he would be back soon. Saeko joked, saying, "Just like newlyweds, right? Am I the bad guy, intruding on their happy moment?" She apologized to her sister. Makoto told Saeko that they needed to hurry, and she playfully called him Nyanta-sensei, telling him to wait a moment. The meeting went on for a while. At the end of the meeting, Makoto thanked Saeko, who reminded him that even though they were just acquaintances, he seemed to get stressed whenever he talked about work. She chuckled and added, "Those documents about royalties and contracts are so boring. Next time, we'll go into more detail." Makoto responded eagerly. While drinking coffee, Saeko called him Mr. Nyanta and mentioned that he looked different, brighter than before. She asked if he was in love with Shinozuka. Makoto suddenly coughed and choked on his coffee. Saeko began praising her sister, saying that Shinozuka was a good student and very dedicated to her novels. "If it's Mr. Nyanta, I can trust my precious sister." Makoto quickly replied, "No, Saeko, Saeko cut him off, saying, "But if you make Shinozuka cry, I will erase you." Makoto nodded in a panic, replying, "Yes." He tried to deny it, saying, "We're just good friends." Saeko interrupted again, saying, "I won't tell anyone, don't worry. I'll keep this a secret." Makoto, embarrassed, said, No, you didn't hear anything I said." Saeko stood up, saying her sister would be angry with her, signaling the end of the meeting. As they left, Saeko asked if they were going on a date afterward, and encouraged them to enjoy themselves. Makoto quickly replied, It's not a date. Saeko looked at him and said, "Leave the adult matters to me. I'll make sure you both stay happy." Makoto was left confused, wondering if going to karaoke counted as a date or not. While walking, he noticed Shinozuka still waiting for him. She quickly asked, "Are you okay? Do you fully understand the contract? Are you not crying?" Makoto assured her that he was fine, saying Saeko was a very good editor. Shinozuka sighed with relief, saying that if anything had happened, she would have kicked down the door. Makoto laughed. "Don't do that." He smiled, holding her hand and feeling happy that nothing had gone wrong. He smiled and held her hand, surprising Shinozuka, who smiled back. Now that everything was settled, they prepared to eat cake and sing karaoke. Saeko, left alone, wished she could join them. Shinozuka wished her sister good luck, and reminded them both to be careful, saying, "Make sure to come back before dark. Time to enjoy the date." With the work done, Makoto breathed a sigh of relief, as he had been so worried earlier. He was now happy that everything had gone smoothly. Shinozuka agreed, saying they were going to have a lot of fun today. She noted that there were more people in this district than in the business district. Shinozuka recalled her sister mentioning that the shop was just down this street. Her face full of excitement, she said, "This is so much fun. Cake and karaoke." Shinozuka noticed an outfit that caught her attention. Makoto looked at her and smiled, as usual. She spotted some cream puffs and thought they looked delicious, then noticed Buzuri Cosmetics and Buzuri Sweets. Shinozuka checked her phone and saw a message from Pagoko saying she was coming to the store. Makoto asked, "Already here?" Shinozuka kept receiving messages like, "Am I bothering your date?" She wondered why everyone kept calling it a date. Makoto quickly changed the subject, asking where the bakery was. But Shinozuka replied that they had walked a bit farther, and the shops along the way looked very attractive. Makoto decided it was time to confess his feelings. But just then, Hayuzaki called out and waved at Shinozuka. Yuzaki ran up and hugged Shinozuka, saying, "I missed you, sister Shinozuka." Shinozuka asked how her studies were going and whether she thought she'd do well on the test. Hyuzaki replied that she believed she would do better than average. She greeted Makoto, and he asked if she had made any new friends. Hyuzaki happily replied, "Yes, actually, I have a boyfriend. Shinozuka asked excitedly, is it a guy? Is he cool? And could he become your real boyfriend? Makoto turned to Hyuzaki, asking for more details. Shinozuka reminded him not to embarrass Hyuzaki, and Makoto denied it, saying he was just worried about Henri's aggression. Hyuzaki quickly pushed Shinozuka and said, I'm hungry, well, let's go to the store. She then called Makoto her brother, mentioning that she hadn't seen him in a while and was happy to see him. She grabbed his hand, and Shinozuka said she would go another way, but the store was right in front of them. They entered the restaurant, where a waitress greeted them and led them to their seats. Hyuzaki admitted that she was nervous because she had never been to such a luxury restaurant. Shinozuka reassured her, saying it was okay, as she wasn't familiar with places like this either. Don't worry, it's fine. Makoto and Hyuzaki were both impressed by the menu, finding everything looked delicious. The girls debated choosing something else, but Makoto reminded them they had come for pancakes. The menu had so many options that the girls kept suggesting different dishes. Makoto said he would stick with pancakes, but was told to be quiet because he was interrupting their conversation. Shinozuka asked everyone to share what they would order. I'm craving a parfait, so I'll choose that. I'll pick a crepe, and I'll go with pancakes, she said. After ordering, Makoto realized that the variety of dishes was a great choice for friends. Hyuzaki felt that what they were doing was fun. Shinozuka never imagined that one day she would be able to share a sweet treat with her friends, something she'd never thought she'd experience. They watched the food being prepared, feeling impressed by the process. When the crepe arrived, they noticed it was burning, and one of them mentioned that it was a flambe style. Makoto looked at the girls, impressed by the food. The food was served at the table. Shinozuka tasted the parfait and found it delicious. Hyuzaki was also impressed, and said she had never eaten a crepe like that before. Makoto tried the pancakes and finally understood why they were so popular. They enjoyed the food and shared each bite with one another to see which dish was the best. In the past, Makoto didn't have any friends he could trust, nor did Ri or Pagoko. But now they met, held hands, walked around town, and shared delicious meals, just enjoying the moment. Makoto realized he couldn't say he didn't trust anyone anymore. Shinozuka asked him to open his mouth so she could feed him. He tried to refuse, but she teased, "You don't like it?" before suddenly feeding him. Makoto said he didn't mind, but it felt awkward. Despite that, he was so happy that it brought tears to his eyes. It was a day filled with new experiences. A grateful Hyuzaki thanked them, saying she wished they could have had more time together. Shinozuka also commented that the food was amazing. Suddenly, Hyuzaki announced that she was going home, leaving Makoto and Shinozuka confused. They invited her to karaoke, but she explained that she had promised to study with a friend. Shinozuka asked if the friend was the guy Hyuzaki had mentioned earlier. Hyuzaki smiled shyly, then said she was truly grateful to have met Shinozuka and Makoto, and that she would stay in touch. Shinozuka told Hyuzaki to wait, assuring her that she had found good friends. Good for her, Makoto added. As Hyuzaki was leaving, she stopped and shouted, "Have fun on your date!" Makoto said something in response, and Shinozuka suggested they go sing karaoke. Once Makoto and Shinozuka were left alone, the atmosphere became awkward and quiet, with both of them blushing. Shinozuka asked Makoto what kind of song he usually sings at karaoke, noting that she had never seen him sing before. Makoto replied that he had never sung at karaoke and seemed to be lost in thought. Shinozuka asked what he was thinking and if this was his first time at karaoke. Makoto reminded her that he had been here once before when he was tricked into coming. Shinozuka apologized for bringing up a bad memory. Suddenly, Makoto stroked her hair gently and said, "Shinozuka, I'm fine, thanks to you." He expressed his gratitude again. Shinozuka asked, "Why are you suddenly like this?" Makoto explained that it wasn't just today. He always felt happy when he was with her. Honestly, he was a little scared about going to karaoke, worried it would bring up the past and he might bother her. He smiled, saying that everything was fine because of Shinozuka. She blushed, and Makoto added that Shinozuka was by his side, and today's time together had been really fun. Shinozuka laughed, saying, Me too. I was so happy." She thanked him. They both looked at each other and smiled, their faces turning red. At that moment, Makoto was more concerned about finishing his book and getting it into print. Shinozuka reassured him that everything would be okay, adding that she was his friend. When the book came out, they would go see it together. She also mentioned that she was writing a book too. Makoto exclaimed in surprise, "Really?" Shinozuka nodded, thanking him for listening. Shinozuka said that thanks to Makoto, she was able to rediscover her love for writing novels. It's thanks to you. Makoto told Shinozuka that it was all thanks to her hard work. He then asked her what the title of her novel was. Shinozuka blushed, lowered her head, and said she would tell him later. Suddenly she shouted, "Come on, we came here to sing karaoke. Let's sing." Makoto wondered why she had said nothing before, but Shinozuka just laughed loudly, saying, "Just for fun." He asked what they should sing and encouraged her to sing first, though he also mentioned that he wasn't good at singing. Shinozuka suddenly had an idea and said, "Why don't you shout out what you want to do from now on?" Makoto was surprised, saying, "Oh my god, that's so embarrassing." But Shinozuka encouraged him, "No one will hear. Today is our special day." He decided to follow along and asked if she was ready. Then Makoto shouted loudly, "I want to be with Shinozuka every day. I want to see Shinozuka and her books on the shelves. I want to eat pancakes with Shinozuka again." Shinozuka's face turned bright red with embarrassment. She had only expected him to say one thing, but he said everything. Finally, she told him that the title of her novel was The Most Important Person in the World. The next morning, Makoto waited in front of Shinozuka's house. Her mother apologized, saying Shinozuka had overslept a bit. Makoto said it was fine. Shinozuka's mother added, "Recently she's been talking about you all the time. I'm so happy you two are sharing such happy moments." Seiko-san just woke up, yawned, greeted Makoto, and asked if Shinozuka had overslept again. Makoto bowed his head, saying, "It's fine. I'll wait for her all day if needed. It's okay if she's a little late." Shinozuka's mother and older sister smiled at him. Finally, Shinozuka appeared and apologized for keeping him waiting. She asked, "What are you and Mom looking at?" Both smiled and said, "It's okay. It's great to be young." Shinozuka sighed and said, "Oh my gosh, let's go, Makoto." On their way to school, they met three girls walking, Minami-san, Kasaragi-san, and Haruka. Haruka asked, "Was Nanako's karaoke thing just a misunderstanding?" Kasaragi-san agreed, and Haruka said that she should talk to the guy. Kasaragi-san agreed, saying, "That's right, he's not like us." Haruka turned around and noticed Makoto. As Makoto and Shinozuka approached, Haruka called out, "Hey, Oni-san," with a face full of regret. Makoto replied, "Good morning, Haruka. I never said it before, but I don't like rice cakes." Haruka was surprised, and Makoto asked Minami and Kasaragi to take good care of his sister from now on. Haruka started to cry, saying that he was now calling her his sister. She tried to explain the Nanako karaoke situation, but Makoto simply replied, "Yeah, I'll talk to you later," and continued walking with Shinozuka. Upon arriving at school, Makoto greeted Miyazaki. "Good morning." He noticed a small cut on her and commented, "What happened?" Miyazaki responded, "Oh, good morning, Shine." Miyazaki tried to say something to Makoto, but he reassured her it was okay and he was fine. Shinozuka stood proudly beside him. Miyazaki nodded, smiling, but her eyes were sad. Makoto said, "See you later, Miyazaki," and walked away, leaving Miyazaki alone in tears. Shinozuka reminded Makoto that the team competition was coming up and asked him to participate. Makoto thought back to when he was younger and used to play catch. The two boys behind them whispered, "Those two have such a good atmosphere. What's going on?" Shinozuka saw them and shouted, "What are you looking at?" The two boys quickly ran off, scared. "You don't need to use that tone anymore," Makoto said. Shinozuka replied, "I have to use it. I'm scared to talk to them." Makoto laughed and the boys ran away, while Saito silently thanked Shinozuka for her support. A few months later, Makoto made a decision. Shinozuka apologized for making him wait so long, but she was always with him. Shinozuka was excited and nervous, and Makoto wondered if their books were on the shelves. Shinozuka was more than just a close friend. She offered her hand to Makoto, and the two held hands. Makoto felt a fleeting sense of relief. Together, they looked at the bookshelves, a feeling of unreality welling up inside them. They wandered around the bookstore, looking for their novels. They gently pushed the bookshelf and saw their books lined up. Makoto couldn't find the words for the feeling he had when he saw their books side by side. They both laughed when they realized what had happened. On this memorable day, Makoto was no longer stuck in the past. He had moved forward and decided to tell her the most important thing. Shinozuka picked up her novel and admitted she was still embarrassed by the title she had chosen. Makoto called her name and said, "To me, you are the most important person in the world. She is the person he loves the most. He loved her more than anyone in the world. Together, they overcame the past and stepped into the future with the people they loved.